and welcome to a brand new episode of Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the podcast. Today's guest is a presenter, a columnist, and she's a CEO after launching her own marketplace, Glassette, last autumn, which is a collection of unique objects for home and life, which I've got to say, I did just get very, very lost on. It's like a collection of art pieces that you can have in your home. It's absolutely divine and gorgeous, and I love it. And as soon as I finish this, I'm going back on it. She's also a mother of two. It's Laura Jackson. Hi. Glassette is so gorgeous.
I know. Well, I feel like it's my third baby. I'm not going to lie. It kind of is after the dog. Maybe I've got 4 babies, actually.
Oh, wow. You just got very busy right there.
Yeah. It's a real labour of love, but I'm obsessed with homeware. And I just didn't feel like there was one place where you could get everything for the home and feel totally inspired. So I decided to build it. And that's Glassette. We launched last year at the end of the year. And yeah, it's going really well. It's brilliant. I absolutely love it. I mean, I'm CEO. Don't really know what that means. Just three
You're
three
basically
letters.
in charge.
Yeah. And I'm like a boss of stuff. I don't know. I'm not a very good boss. Actually, my co-founder, who's my brother-in-law, is like, you can't say that to people. I'm like, I'm really sorry. I'm the most unprofessional person going.
Let's talk about you now. Where did you grow up? I'm guessing up north somewhere, Laura.
Well, yes, you're right. I grew up in Huddersfield, which I absolutely loved. I'm from quite a big family, so there was 5 kids at home. My mum married a guy that was widowed with 3 children, and my mum had me and my sister, me and my sister Anna, when she was married to my dad. But before my real dad married my mum, he was married with another daughter. So it's quite a big family. But yeah, I grew up. There were 7 of us at home, and my mum's brother lived with us as well. So there was 8 of us. It was really busy, really hectic. Yeah, just a large northern, very loud family, which I loved.
Yeah. And when you were looking ahead to your future, did you think about family life and what that would look like? Were you someone who was going to try and almost replicate the chaos that came before? Or were you like, it's going to be super chilled, it's going to be a very different environment?
Well, do you know what? I always thought I just wanted one mum and one dad when I have a family, which is really weird because I actually love the fact that I'm from a split family. I don't even know what the correct terminology is. But yeah, I did like the chaos. I thrived in the chaos. I loved going to see my dad at the weekend. I loved having a stepdad. I loved his children. I loved my sister. I liked that kind of mix. But I always thought, right, I just like to make things a bit simpler for my children. I always knew I wanted a big family, though. I've got 2, and I would like to have another one, which makes me feel terrified.
Well, how old are they now?
1 and 2.
Oh my gosh!
Do you know what? I said to my husband the other day, I was like, do you know what? If I got pregnant with twins, it wouldn't be the worst thing, would it? And he was like, you're mad. You're absolutely bonkers. What's wrong with you? And it would be really difficult, I'm sure. But yeah, like I said, I do thrive in the chaos of it all. Yeah. And I do really love being a mum.
Yeah. It must have been strange for you, having you and your sister, and then all of a sudden having these more siblings in the mix. Was it a step for you guys going from that? And did it all happen, I guess, in a seamless way if you all moved in together?
Well, I was really young when my mum remarried. I must have been 3 or 4. So I don't really remember a time without my stepdad in my life as that role of a stepdad, really. I do remember going to my dad at the weekend really young, and I loved spending the weekend with him, because it was me, my sister and my dad, and it was a lot quieter. And it was a real gear change from what was happening at home with my mum. And yeah, it's like being from a blended family is brilliant, and it also massively has its challenges, Yeah. And actually I read Anya Hindmarsh's book, If in Doubt, Wash Your Hair, and I've never spoken or heard anybody talk about being in a blended family where one of the parents was widowed, and it really struck a chord with me. And I there were so many things that she said that I felt really aligned and synergy with my feelings. But yeah, it was brilliant and different in equal measure. But I didn't know anything else, and I think that I was saying this to the other day, when you're Northern, you're just told that you've got to work hard to get what you want. Yeah. So it's difficult for me to take a break. It's difficult for me to like slow down or not be ambitious or not to want to do some hard graft, because it's always been drilled into us from an early age that, oh, you work hard and you get what you work for, you know. My mum always made us have a job, even from just giving out leaflets at 12, 13, you know. So
I used to go and polish someone's brass. There was an old lady up the road. She had brass that I used to polish.
I thought you were going to say brass then. I was like, woo!
Polish her brass. When did you start thinking about actually like turning your head towards motherhood and thinking, you know what, now's the time? Or is that quite difficult actually doing what you do? Because we all know that when it comes to work and that hard graft, you have to kind of say, that you can kind of factor it in, or you're just going to see what happens. Like, it's a real hard thing to navigate, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on women, which I absolutely hate.
Yeah.
You meet a boy, oh, when you're getting married, you get married. Oh, when you're having a baby, you have a baby. When you're having another one. And it's just, you constantly just asked. And I know that people do mean well, but as a woman, you feel that pressure. Yeah. My husband has always wanted children, and ever since I met him 10 years ago, one of the first things he said to me was, I really want to be a dad and I can't wait to have children. And he's such a loving and caring man. I always knew he'd be a really, really good dad. But I felt a bit nervous about work, if I'm honest. Yeah. I feel like I'm a real polymath, hybrid person, whatever you want to call it. And I was like, that was really, when I was thinking about it, was my telly days. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not an important person that people want to see me pregnant on the telly. I don't want to take a back seat because I'm worried that my career won't take off. So there's all these things going around in my mind and just figuring out when would be a good time. And I think I just was listening to people, and they were like, there's never a good time. You should just, if you want to be a mum, just crack on and do it. And I did. And my first pregnancy was really, really strange in the fact that we were doing up the house and there was just a lot going on, and I really didn't think of myself as someone that was pregnant. I just carried on with my everyday life. I was really like, oh, I'm not going to be this pregnant person that doesn't do this or, follows all the rules or whatever. I just kind of ignored the fact that I was pregnant and got on with it.
Yeah.
But I had the opposite experience with my son, where I really, grabbed the horn by the balls, so to speak, and was like, right, I'm pregnant. I'm gonna research this. I'm gonna find out what happens to my body and why I'm feeling like this, and what I should eat and what I shouldn't eat, and how I should be looking after myself, which is none of the things I did with Sid. I threw myself into it. I had a completely different birthing experience, pregnancy experience.
Was the result of you doing that the second time round a result of something that happened in the first pregnancy?
I think it was COVID, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm such a busy bee. Like, I love being busy. I love chatting to people, and, I'm always here, there and everywhere. So when I was pregnant with Sid, it was just, there was so much going on that I didn't really take stock of the fact that, wow, this is a really amazing thing that my body's doing. I'm growing a baby and I'm not really doing anything. Like, I've never trained for a marathon because I'm terrible at running, but I'm sure people that do train for marathons, it's hard bloody work.
Yeah.
But having a baby, it's just growing inside of you and you're not doing anything. Just look at your app. Oh, it's a pineapple now, or oh, it's a melon. And that's kind of it. But I think with COVID, we were at home and I was like, God, right, I'm pregnant again. And I've actually got time to really think about what this means and how to do this. And I had a great experience at Homerton with Sydney. The hospital were fantastic. They were amazing. But with my second, Remy, they were really hands-off, and I'm absolutely not...
because of COVID, it's such a different experience.
It was worlds apart. Second time mum, no problems, they kind of just let me get on with it. And I'm not an anxious person, and I'm definitely not a worrier, but I started to just not feel good about the whole thing. And like, why have I only had 2 calls over the phone with somebody? Why is no one seeing me? Like, I haven't had my scan yet. There's a backlog of scans. I couldn't go into, John wasn't part of it, couldn't go into the hospital. Then when I did see a midwife, she was having a really bad day and said that she was leaving the NHS because she's having a bad time. And so I kind of came out of that appointment in tears, really, and called up John. I was like, I don't know what to do. I just don't, this is not what happened last time. I don't understand. And then I just started thinking, right, I need to do what I normally do in any situation and just take control and just feel really positive and look at my options. What can I do to make myself feel better? And I asked around and I found out about these amazing group of women called the Forest Midwives, and they were supported by the NHS until COVID when funding ran out for them. And they're a collective of kind of call the midwife women, as it were. They were all about continuity of care. They were all about checking in with you, great communication, everything that usually the NHS and midwifery is about.
Yeah.
But that thing, COVID, threw a massive spanner in the works. So I called them up and I spoke to this lady, and she was so amazing. She was so calm and lovely and just told me I've got nothing to worry about. There's loads of pregnant people. You're going to be fine. You're just having a baby. It's this, it's that. Do you want me to come round? We'll have a cup of tea and a chat. So she came round, arm in a PPE. No. And I'm like the worst COVID person ever. I'm always like giving people hugs and kissing people. And in fact, a couple of people said, I'm definitely avoiding you during COVID because you are far too like huggy for me. So they came over and I thought maybe I should have my baby at home. Maybe I should have a private midwife, which, by the way, is so far-fetched for me. And,
really?
Oh my God, a private midwife? No way. Not at all in my remit of stuff. And my husband was like, no way. His dad was an NHS GP. His sister works for the NHS. He was like, he was like, who are we? We don't have a private midwife. But I said to him, we paid for our wedding by ourselves. We made sure everyone had a really lovely time. We go on nice holidays that we pay for. Why would we not put some money and resource into having a baby, which is one of the most important things in our life that's going to happen? And after some persuading, we decided to go ahead. I mean, it's not the most ridiculous amount of money, but it costs more than the NHS, which is free. But they just were amazing. Bex and Debs, they're called. It was so wild, the thought of having a baby at home. I'd never even thought about it. And actually I listened to your podcast with Davina about it because someone said you have to listen to
and
Davina
she is the
McCall.
most positive person to listen to as well when it comes to pregnancy and birth. Like, she loves imparting her joy for it, which is amazing to listen to.
Yeah. I loved listening to it. And I had a really great experience. I had a great experience with Sid, to be honest. And I'm definitely that really annoying person that's like, oh, I'm so excited for you. You're having a baby. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. You're going to feel so empowered. And I mean, there was times where I was a bit like, do I really believe everything that I'm saying? Am I really going to feel, am I going to feel empowered, or is this just going to really hurt? But I did. It was amazing. I mean, actually, I have to tell you that I was going to see this lady called Gary Mother. She's what was an obstetrician at the Whittington Hospital, and she lives up the road from me. And a friend of mine, Jessie, who was going to see her, said, oh, you've got to meet Gary. She's like all sorts of weird and wonderful.
Are we talking about Jessie Ware, who has been on the podcast and talked about her someone that she saw, and she was like, she just chucks everything at one of her births. Is it the same lady?
Potentially. I couldn't possibly say. Maybe.
So did you go and see this lady?
I went to see this lady, and I just went for like massage and reflexology and just kind of trying to put myself in hypnotherapy, trying to put yourself somewhere else when you're not feeling your best. Is it a holiday? Is it a beach? Is it the wedding? Whatever. So that really helped me research about what would be happening with my body and then where to take myself when I felt like that. And then these amazing home birth midwives. And I had 40 minutes I had my baby in.
Wow.
40 minutes. My sister was at the house.
Did the midwife have enough time to actually get to you?
No. Do you know what? I was watching Strictly Come Dancing. Love Strictly Come Dancing. Huge fan. And We had a curry and it was just as it had finished. And I said to my husband, oh God, I don't feel well. Oh, I don't feel well. So, you know, when you think back now and you're like, you're obviously in labour. Oh, I don't feel well. And I was like on all hands and knees while everybody, well, my sister and her husband, they were all just sat having a curry watching telly. I'm on my hands and knees like, oh. They're like, oh, she's fine. And then when I called them I think I called Debbie because she lives around the corner, and she was like, are you sure you're all right? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm fine.
How many weeks were you by this point?
Oh, this was exactly my due date.
Wow, okay. So everyone's just being really quite relaxed about it.
Well, do you know what? I'd gone out for a lovely Italian meal that afternoon, and I had 2 glasses of champagne because I thought, oh, it's my due date, celebrate this. So I think I thought I've pushed myself a bit too far now. And then I was in the bathroom. My sister is so funny. She said, do you want me to read you a book? I said, no, I don't want you to read me a book. Get your phone out and time me. I know. It's a book called Cozy by a friend of mine called Laura Weir. And she started reading me this book and I was like, you were insane. And then half an hour later, I was in the living room and my sister, we're trying to all fill up the pool. My sister had the blender, the blending cup, and she was walking around trying to fill the pool up with a blending cup. I thought, you're going to be here all day.
It's great, though, seeing how different people react and respond in those sorts of situations.
Oh my God, my poor brother-in-law was stood in the doorway, like completely white, didn't know what to do, couldn't look at me in the face. My sister was walking around with this like blender full of like water that was absolutely not going to fill the pool up. And John was just like looking for towels and things. I mean, but when Debbie came in, she was like, what is happening? You do this, you do this, you do this. And then I was like, oh my God, how long? And she, well, I mean, I didn't say it that eloquently. It was like, how long? And she was like, honestly, just 2 pushes and I reckon he's out. And that was it. All done.
It's crazy. My second flew out like that. Literally,
what about the third?
Oh, well, you shouldn't listen to people when they say about third, because I kept getting told about it was going to be a bit tricksy. But actually, my second child, Buddy, had fallen off the sofa and gone straight into a coffee table that night, and we scooped him up, and I was in hospital with him, getting him stitched up when my contractions started. So I think my head was also split between 2 places, because after basically his grandparents had to take him up to get stitched up properly the next day. And it was only after that, it was 2 hours after that Max was born. So I think my body and my mind were just somewhere else, and I realised I wasn't breathing properly. I was breathing into my chest rather than actually into my diaphragm, or sending breath anywhere that was useful. So I think it's little bits like that. So although it was tricksy, I think actually that it was that way because of certain things that had happened, rather than the third pregnancy being tricky, I think, or third birth.
I think there's so much to be said about how fear is fear or stress or distraction is a massive blocker in giving birth.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt that being at home, I didn't have any of those things. I wasn't distracted by anything. Like Sid was in bed. I felt really happy. I was with the people that I love the most in the world. And it was a really lovely experience. There was a point where, just as I was walking down the stairs, my waters broke, and there was a point where I was kind of in the bedroom on my own, and I just kind of had a bit of a word to myself, and I really like the sea. It always reminds me of my brother-in-law. He's like, oh God, you're always like, love the sea. But I love the sea. And I always think of those contractions as just taking a breath and going under the waves and letting that water just roll over me. And I was just lying on the bed thinking, I'm like under this wave, but I can either like paddle with the wave or paddle against it. I'm on this kind of like treadmill, and if I don't run and keep up, I'm going to fall off, and then I've got to get back on again. So I just kind of had this I was trying to be really headstrong and go, I've just got to go with it. Like my body knows exactly what it's doing. Don't fight against it. Just go with it as much as possible. And it's weird because I feel like pain is such a negative word. I feel like it's an intensity that your body already knows, and that we're built to be able to deal with. I mean, honestly, getting an ingrown hair out of my husband's face feels like the world's ended. So I feel sometimes like, oh my God, I managed to have a baby at home in my living room. Whenever anybody tells me that something isn't possible or, you know, tells me a no, I'm like, I gave birth to a baby in my living room. Come on.
That's also how I put pain, like if we're talking about the word pain, into perspective for me. Because if something's really hurting, because I gave, you know, I've given birth 3 times and I have had no painkillers or anything with that, with any of them. So I'm like, if I am in pain, that is proper pain. Because if I can give birth and be fine with it, then this problem that I'm experiencing right now is a real problem. Although I guess, you know, when you're injured and you're not promised a baby at the end of it, it's a bit different.
Yeah, you're like, how big is my lollipop? Because I'm going to need something. Yeah. But I mean, I had the opposite experience with Sid, and I had an epidural, and it was absolutely amazing.
So what was that whole experience like? Where were you? What did you start contractions or anything like that with Sid?
No, I feel like everything's always about food in my life. I was eating some licorice tornadoes, and she hadn't moved, and I just kept thinking to myself, oh, am I being mental or is she not moved? And I called my mum, and my mum was just like, if you've got any concerns, you just have to go to the hospital. This is the most precious thing happening to you.
Yeah.
So go to the hospital and see what you're saying. When I went to the hospital, they just kind of said, the baby's not being very active, and that's usually because they're conserving their energy and it's not right. We would like to start an induction. And I think I was like, I am absolutely not getting induced. So I was in my head, like, just walking, squatting, like, around the labour ward.
Isn't it funny as well, though, where our mind goes, where we say, I'm not doing that. You're not even going to go, you're not going to entertain that. But, you know, it's funny how we have locks in our brains of where we feel like we're going to allow ourselves to go.
Yeah, it's so, honestly, yeah, so true. Because weirdly, I said to the midwives and to my husband, this baby is not having a birthday past the 5th of December. Absolutely not, no way. It's too close to Christmas. I'm not celebrating them both too close together. And he's like, what are you on about? And on my due date, I was like, oh my God, I've not only ever been lying to everybody else, I've been lying to myself about this whole 5th birthday thing, 5th of December birthday thing. And lo and behold, it came on the 5th of December. So I was like, whoa. Oh. But yeah, I kind of was like, I am not being induced. This is not happening. She literally was like, I could see her coming towards me, wheeling the bloody drip. And I was like, no. And then I said to her, I don't feel well. And she's like, this woman was so funny. She said, are you joking? I said, no, don't know what you're talking about. She said, how do you feel? I said, well, it's like this period pain and it's coming and going. She's just started laughing.
You know, earlier when you said about how much work and how much you read up for the second child and how blasé you were about the first, is this maybe the point in which it hit you that you were maybe having a baby?
I mean, I'd literally got no idea. And I do think going in with no knowledge with your first is kind of, well, it was a good thing for me. I mean, it's such a personal journey, isn't it? But it worked for me at that time. And then it was 12 hours. I think about 10 hours in, my waters hadn't broke, so they broke my waters. And I think I kind of went from contracting and being in a place where I'm like, okay, I know what's going on, I feel in control of things, to a place where I was like, I did not know that this was going to happen, and I don't feel in control of my contractions, and I just didn't know what was going on. And I just said, I really, really want the epidural. So they got me an epidural. Then I was like, this is great. Why did no one give me this earlier? This is brilliant. This is great. Because they were like, because you said you didn't want it. And I was like, I was lying. This is brilliant. And then I really needed the toilet. And the lady said to me, if you can move your legs and get yourself to the toilet, you can absolutely get off the toilet. Because I didn't want one of those. I didn't want one of those bags. And then I was like, yeah, I can't move either of my legs. So the bag sounds great. And then she came, and you know, when they're like push, and I'm like, push what? Literally. And you know, I don't know if you've ever seen that Ab Fab episode where she's not got the Hoover plugged in, Bubbles, and she's got the vac, and she's like, zoom, zoom, and she says to her, you got to plug it in, not make the noise. And that's how I felt like when I was pushing. I was like, I had no idea, like literally no idea what I was doing.
It's so weird, isn't it? Like, that must be such a weird sensation when you can't feel anything. So you have no idea whether you're actually doing what they're asking you to do at all.
I know. I mean, they got they got her out, and she was absolutely fine. She did look like Marge Simpson for a while with the old tugging of the head, but loved her nevertheless. Yeah, it was a totally different experience. But I have to say, which I know that you'll know about, not having any of the, pain relief sounds like a horrible, not the right thing to say, but, not having any of the meds that are offered to you, my recovery was like, if someone said to me the day after Remy was born, I'm so sorry, you got to do this job tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, I feel fine. But with Sid, it took me quite a long time after the epidural and after the kind of medication of the hospital and to kind of feel like myself again. But then I don't know whether that's a first baby, second baby, your body knows what's going. I mean, I don't know.
It's hard, isn't it? And what's interesting as well is for you going into the second birth, having had that experience as well, I think there is something. So I started definitely going into my second. Even though the first was pretty plain sailing and textbook, I felt a little bit apprehensive going into the second.
Really?
Like
Is it 'cause you know?
Then you know what those sensations are. And also in my head I was like, well, that one went well, so what's going to happen this time? Those little niggles that get to you, that kind of, which is, so we did hypnobirthing each time, and that for me worked really well in terms of relaxing and releasing all of that. And when you were saying about the first labour, how it got pretty intense, it's interesting how second time round you were seeing that as the sea, you were seeing that as the waves and kind of going with it rather than trying to swim against it.
I definitely would have the third at home, and I'd do everything that I did with my second. I feel like looking after myself, really, knowledge is power, isn't it? So just kind of feel like equipped with information that will help me or guide me or do it better is the wrong use of words, but just inform me, I think was a better birthing situation. And being at home made me feel more relaxed. And I loved afterwards, we had a little fire and we all had a little glass of champagne and a cake. It was so nice. You don't get that at the hospital, although tea and toast,
there we go,
quite nice afterwards.
I love it as well. It's always tea and toast. No matter where you are, it's the best tea and toast you'll ever get. Always.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was it like meeting Sid and becoming, having your firstborn in your arms?
Oh, it was really amazing. I think because with Sid, I hadn't really thought about what my life was going to be as a mum or with a child. It's definitely different 1 to 2. I'm not sure if you found this. One's like having a little accessory. You can bring it around with you. It'll sit in the corner. When it's really little, it'll just sit in its seat while you can have a glass of wine with your friend. And when you've got 2, it's like running a zoo. You've got 1 in one. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like with 3. 1 in one place, 1 in another. It made me feel all kinds of amazingness about my mum having to get 5 people out of the door to school. She deserves a medal. But it was just really, really lovely. I mean, you think your child, don't you, is just the cutest, most gorgeous thing ever. I did look back at some pictures the other day and I said to John, she looks like Ross Kemp. I can't believe we ever thought she was so amazing.
I remember a midwife saying to me early on, it takes 24 hours for your baby to look like the baby you think you're going to get. For the first 24, they're a bit shriveled, they're a bit, they're not quite as you think they're going to be. They will grow into that. I remember seeing the babies and being like, I see that now.
It's mad. John said to me, hey, did you hear what the midwife said? They checked for a bum hole. I'm like, as if that's the first thing that you've said to me out of all of this experience.
Such a beautiful experience.
I know. What a moment. What a moment. She's such a Sid now. Oh, she's so cheeky.
Aww.
She's got such a personality. And it is amazing, isn't it? I mean, my mum said to me, I loved every single phase of you and Anna. I just loved when you were a baby and I loved when you were a toddler. And when you just had your baby, you're a bit like, I can't really understand that because I don't really know what you're talking about. And now it's so true. Now she can kind of talk and she's got her own personality and she says things and I'm like, oh, did you hear what she said? And then I'm like, oh my God, shut up. You're so annoying. To me, not to Sid.
I often think, like, what did we talk about before we had kids? Like, because there is so much now that of my life that is surrounded in them. You know what I mean? Like the things that I find fun are there, you know, it's all that. How did you feel leaving the hospital? And I know that the first few weeks were a little bit hairy.
Yeah, I found it really just a bit emotional and a bit mad. And I think I'm so used to being such a busy bee and I felt so like stuck, I guess. And, you know, I don't know who everyone is, but, you know, people say, oh, only try and do one thing a day. And I just found all the like, oh, you got to have your red book. Everyone's always asking me for this red book. And I just thought, oh, give me an app, will you? So I don't have to worry about this red book that I just don't know where it is.
I'm continuously forgetting the red book.
Oh, I just found all that really stressful. I just found it really the admin of having a baby is really annoying.
Yeah.
Oh, this person's coming, you got to go to this appointment, have you got your red book, have you had your vaccinations? Yeah, it took me a while to kind of feel like myself again. I'm really, really lucky. I've never struggled with any kind of post-baby blues or postnatal depression. It was more the just weird fraughtness of it all. And you don't really know what to do. Like, you don't know what to do, even if, yeah.
And also, if you're someone who's used to going 100 miles an hour, used to getting loads of stuff done, used to being in control, there's a massive shift when you have a newborn, when you become a mum, and you're both learning. It's almost like you're starting again in a really weird world where everything changes, like your responsibility changes. The fact that you've got this little human who is dependent on you for everything. You know, you can't just get up and walk out the door. That simple thing has changed. You can't just go and nip to the loo without thought. Everything requires thought. And it can be really overwhelming. Plus, on top of that, you're not sleeping. You're not getting all that, you know, the sleep, the food, the self-care that you would normally send inwards. You're not getting any of that.
Yeah. I mean, my aftercare with Remy was, again, so different. I think after Sid, I just ate rubbish food, stayed in bed and watched telly and just cuddled. And it was really, really lovely. But I wasn't really looking after myself or nurturing my body that had grown a baby, birthed a baby, and then was recovering from all of this. Whereas with Remy, you know, the things that I read and the research that I did and the work that I'd done kind of led me down the path of, well, you need to recuperate and look after your body and nourish your body and take care of your body. And I was eating better and like drinking, I mean, it sounds mad, drinking water, but with Sid, you know, I'd just be probably like grab a can of something fizzy and think that was okay. And in my recovery, I remember we went to Sri Lanka when she was about 9 or 10 months. And I look back at those pictures and I think, oh, I was really happy. But I didn't look like myself. I felt still a bit bloated and still a bit like not quite myself.
Yeah.
Whereas with Remy, I mean, he was just a year not that long ago. I feel great and so normal, and maybe that's why I'm like, oh, ready to have a baby again. It's just such a personal journey, and I was two different people with these two different pregnancies. Yeah. It's absolutely mad. And I suppose with my first pregnancy, I didn't want to be that person who was all about having a baby and all they did was talk about the baby. And then when you've got a baby, you just don't care. No. You just think, I just want my family to be happy and I want them to be healthy and safe, and yeah.
Your second pregnancy, you didn't share publicly until you were about 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks until your due date that you shared that you were even pregnant the second time round.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was COVID, but then in the post that you did share, you said something about you didn't want work-wise to people think you were less capable, which is fascinating as well when you think you're already a mum, you've already done it, but even at that point, and I wonder actually if it's because it is part of it is lockdown, is COVID times, work is already a weird place, so to add something else to that, You know, whether your mind was like, nope, not going to do it, just going to keep going.
Yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? People, there's so much has changed in the world in the last 2 years, not just COVID, but, you know, diversity, inclusion, you know, how people would think about pregnant women in the workplace, for instance. And all of these are really positive changes. But I think, I was just worried that I think I'd had a situation where somebody had found out I was pregnant and I was restricted. I can't really remember, but there was definitely a reason for me not wanting to share it. I've always, I think with broadcasting as well, for some, you know, I'm kind of still thought about as new talent and the opportunities are few and far between, and I just didn't want anything to affect that.
Yeah.
Which sounds absolutely mad now saying that out loud, but I guess that's truthfully and honestly how I felt. I didn't want to give people another reason to not employ me. There's enough of those, no joking. But, you know, like, I didn't want to give people another reason not to employ me or not to think about me.
Yeah. Well, now that you are...
Sounds a bit dark and deep, sorry.
No, but that's a reality that so many people face in terms of, you know, being in the workplace. When do they share, or going for jobs? When do they share that they're pregnant, or that they're, you know, that's the next steps that they're thinking of doing? I think there are so many things going against women in terms of pregnancy, in terms of birth and having kids, that it feels like a difficult area for women to share in that space, because they don't want to be, you know, put into labelled and then be told that they're not going to be able to do the job to a sufficient standard because they've got other commitments.
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it? It's really mad. But I think that's like owning a business. That's, you know, I want to take all of my learnings and make sure that I create a good culture that is a really transparent workplace where people can communicate and don't feel any sort of nervousness to go away and have a baby and take the time that they need, because that doesn't make them not capable at all. If anything, I mean, Remy was born in December, and by mid-January, I'd already thought about a business idea that then I spent 9 months working on and delivered Glassette at the at the end of that year. So I don't know if you think the same, but I feel so creative when I'm pregnant and just had a baby. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. Those like mental juices are absolutely going, and you just feel like, if I can grow a baby inside of me, I can do anything. So it's this like lovely confidence and feeling empowered to take on the world.
And how are you managing to juggle now? I mean, it's the big question that is asked of a lot of parents, mostly women, let's be honest.
All women. Nobody ever would say to my husband, how are you managing work and kids? Nobody ever says that to him, and it really annoys me. No one ever says working dad. They're always like working mum. It's so annoying, isn't it?
Or they ask you how... I always get asked, you know, what's Tom like as a dad? If Tom was asked what's G like as a mum, I'd be like, piss off, you know. But there is that thing about balancing, and I would say for us, we have to once a month kind of sit down and go, what's working, what's not, you know. And it is that, I think it's between you as a couple, or, you know, however, you know, whatever your situation is, to kind of go, this is both of us, it's not just me. How are we going to juggle this to make this situation work? Because it's not, you know, is it the case that one of us works and one of us looks after the kids? Is it the case that both of us work? Because for lots of people financially they have to. And in that case, in that situation, you know, how do we manage the children, the situation that we're in? But I think for us, it's definitely an ongoing balancing act, I would say. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, John's amazing. He's really brilliant, very nurturing, very patient, really kind, gives as much time as he possibly can. But we're both the same, I guess, like you and Tom. We really love our jobs, and we get so much out of our jobs, and it gives me so much joy in my job, and I love meeting different people, and I just think that it's really exciting. And I want my children to know that both of their parents work, and both of their parents really enjoy their jobs, and both of us have come from the north, and we've doing our dream jobs, and that's just from sheer hard work. And you can be anything that you want to be. I think that that's like really exciting to be able to pass that wisdom on to my kids. But yeah, I guess like you guys, we sit down and we're like, right, what can we do better? We try and go out for dinner, you know, once every other week, try and do something nice together. Then at the weekends, try and do something really lovely with the kids. Jess has been such a great friend to me, especially with loads of mum stuff, because she's such a great mum. You know, she's the one with the felt tips and the colouring pads, and I was never. I'm really learning about all of this stuff. You know, like I want to make sure that I've got like a colouring pack and I've not forgot anything, and I'm just really learning as I go. I mean, they're only 1 and 2, you know. I'm just trying to, I'm definitely figuring it all out. But we obviously have childcare for both of them because it would be impossible to work without that.
Yeah.
But, you know, you work and then you give all your money to childcare, and it's a juggle. But it's really hard. It's really hard. Yeah, I don't think any parent.
I mean, it's really hard, but also it's pretty brilliant that your kids are seeing you do what you love. Like, I think that when I go on treks so I do treks with Copperfield, you know, I go away for a certain amount of time and I'm not with them. And I could either spend that whole time really pining for them and thinking, what have I done? Or going and making the most of it and making the most of that experience and just completely loving being out in nature, and then coming back and having them see that mum's gone off and done that, and that they can do that. Like, it doesn't, I think it's just really important and great that kids can see parents do that. Laura, if you were going to write a letter on motherhood, who would it be to, and what would you say? It can be to a person, it can be to yourself, it can be to an object, it can be to your kids, whoever you want.
Maybe to Sydney, I think, or both of them. In fact, weirdly, when they were both born, I bought them both a book, and I write them letters.
I did this in pregnancy.
Yeah. So every birthday or any like event where they've done something. So, you know, when Remy started walking, I kind of like wrote him a little letter. So I think it would be writing them a letter, just letting them know how I'm doing it and that I'm really trying my best.
Aww. You clearly are.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, isn't it? Because there's no right or wrong way. Again, like it's like pregnancy, isn't it? It's just such a personal thing of, you know, the sleeping and the discipline and what they eat and yeah, it's but it makes you a more well-rounded person, which I always think is a good thing.
We finished the podcast with you finishing 3 sentences. Are you ready?
Yes.
Being a mum means
being as selfless as possible and being really patient and really kind in its truest form.
Since having children, I
have learned so much about myself, and it's crazy that these small people have managed to teach me more than I ever thought was possible, and all about unconditional love, which I thought I knew about, but I really didn't.
Final sentence. I'm happy when
I'm with all of my family and it's really chaotic and everybody's sat around the table eating, having a really lovely time, and I go to the toilet or I'll take something to the dishwasher and I look over at everybody, and in that moment I'm like, oh my God, this is my life.
I love the fact as well that it's around the dinner table, because one thing we haven't actually touched on is how much you absolutely love food. And that must be a joy in itself, seeing your kids do they enjoy food to the same extent that you do? Oh, that must be lovely.
I mean, my son is 1, but he looks like a 12-year-old. He's absolutely huge. My husband calls him Chunky Chip. It's massive. Yeah, I love food. It really is the vehicle for everything.
Yeah.
And my dining table really anchors my home. It is where I come and put the keys, the shopping, the kids colour, the kids paint. We have wine with friends. John and I have dinner. We have Sunday roast. It's just the place that I feel, I don't know, like I gravitate to when I walk through the door. I really, really love it. And yeah, food is a huge part of my life. I love cooking. Although I feel like I always say I'm just a master assembler, love assembling the stuff. But yeah, it's really not, it sounds really silly, but love watching the kids eat. Makes me so happy.
It's so good.
When Sid tries a green bean, I'm like, oh, good for you, you tried a green bean.
But do you get it like the rest of us though, in terms of, so I find the thing that I've taken the most time over will end up on the floor first. You know, they're just kind of like, do you still get the dismissing of certain things? And how do you, as a foodie, respond to that?
I mean, so the phase of the child, let's say, is it like 9 months to 18 months? Oh my God, also, you know, when you meet someone, they tell you that their child is 24 months. I'm like, your child is 2. Your child is 2. But like between like that kind of age when they just throw everything on the floor, I spend most of the time actually on my hands and knees cleaning stuff up off the floor. It's really not that glamorous. Yeah, it is a bit annoying when you make something for them and it goes on the floor. But they do try things. They love food, but I don't push them if they don't want to eat it. I remember I had my dad's mum was brilliant. She's lived in Sheffield, and they always used to make us gammon and eggs. Hate eggs, never liked eggs. And she'd always just say, don't eat it, love. If you don't want it, don't eat it. And I always really respected her for that. She never forced me to eat my food. So, oh, that's the dog. If I'll say to her, just try it. If you don't like it, I'll make some pasta. That's it. And that's like the default. So yeah, that's kind of working so far. God, I hope they don't grow up and hate us. It's just, it's so fearful, isn't it? I'm like, God, you're going to be 18 and then you're going to be like, shut up, Mum.
I think we've got to just prepare for the fact that there probably will be phases where they do say that they hate us, and that's okay, because we all come back. Well, the majority of us come back to our parents, you know, and we become, I think it's just a part of growing up and finding your independence and stuff. So fingers crossed.
I know. We can just all live. All the mums can live together in some sort of really big, beautiful house and
drink lots of wine.
Oh God, that would be great.
There we go.
Just a vat of wine somewhere.
There we go. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. And literally, I am now going to go and just scroll through Glassette and just lose myself in it.
Oh, honestly, I'm such a huge fan of you and everything that you do. You're amazing. And I think you know that I've loved and stalked you for all of the time. But yeah, I think you're such a great person and a great role model. And I'm so honoured to be on this podcast. I can't believe it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Like, made it on the podcast.
You're here.